that says award. It's going to be a number. Let's say it's $500,000. That's your award. We hope you're going to be able to get that whole amount, but we don't have the money to pay you that whole amount now. We only have a certain amount of money in the first 5 years. That award is going to tell you what you received for economic loss, what you received for non-economic loss, and what our offsets are. And then you're going to have a number that's going to be your award. And then we tell you we're paying you in your first payment 10%. Now we may pay you more in the third or fourth year when we know how many people are actually coming. And in the sixth year, in 2016, when the rest of the money comes into the fund, you will either get your entire reward or some pro rata share of it. So that's the best we could do under the circumstances, the way Congress set it up. We are glad that we got our first awards out. We now have systems in place. I must say that 80% of the claimants are represented by lawyers. This is a complicated process. It's not an easy process. We try to make it as easy as possible, but it may not be easy for you. Lawyers are helpful. Lawyers can only recover 10% of what you recover. That's a very small amount as compared to what lawyers usually would get in this kind of situation. So if you don't want to fill it out yourself, there are many fine lawyers that will help you do it, and you ought to consider that. It's better to get an award than not be able to fill the form out properly, and we want you to do that. Fill the form out properly or get a lawyer who can help you fill it out. Now, we've been working with the lawyers to try to get them to understand what we need, and they've been cooperative, and we are continuing to work with them. And I know we're going to get a high level of cooperation from them. But this is a tough process because we need to get the documentation. We can't go back to Congress and say, we just gave this money away. We have to document that we gave it to people who were meant to be covered by the statute. So let's do this now. I'd like to introduce you to the Deputy Special Master who just flew in from Washington to be with us. Is going to take you through the next part of the presentation, and then we're going to open it up for questions, and we hope we can take as many questions as we can. And I really appreciate you all coming out for this, and I hope we can move this along even faster. Our goal is to get as many of these compensation awards as we can done this year so that people can get money. And if you will get calls from my staff. They will call you if you have claims. They will write to you. They will tell you what's missing. Try to get them the information, and if you can't, let us know that you can't. We'll try to get it for you. Our goal is to help you get through this process so we can get compensation to you as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So thank you very much. Debbie, can you come up and...
Okay, so I'm so glad to see so many people here. This is really, I think, hopefully be very helpful for everyone. So I'm going to walk through the application process and try to point out places where we have seen common issues and try to give you some tips on what might help when you're submitting your application. The first point is that we have tried to make this simpler for people in the sense that we've put this all online so that you can fill out your application online. We have a website that will guide you through the registration and application process. Most people are taking advantage of the online process, but if you are not able to do that or you're not comfortable, we do have the option of sending you hard copy forms and you can fill them out. The advantage of the online process is that it takes you through right to the questions that you need to answer. So if you answer a certain question one way, you can skip over perhaps a whole series of questions. The online process will simply direct you to the next one you need to answer. And the idea is to hopefully target people into the things they need to address given their particular situation. So we know that sometimes people have questions. We have a helpline for that. And as I mentioned, we have, and maybe we should look at the website slide, we have, our website has a number of sections that are intended to give you some assistance in filling out forms and in registering. We have guidance, we have instructions, we have some video sections that it will help you with that process. And of course, as Sheila mentioned, we really do have a staff here to help, and if there's a problem and you can't figure something out, we have a helpline. We're happy to try to figure out what the issue is and see what we can do to help you over the hurdle. So let me just sort of take a minute and walk through what really happens when you fill out your form and you start the process. What do we do? What do we need from you in order to get your claim through the proceedings, through the process as quickly as possible? So first, there's a registration process. So everybody can sign up and register. There's a few questions on the registration form. That is not a claim. That is simply a registration. So that's step one. On the online process, and again, I'm focused on that because that's where most people have decided to start their application process. You register, you get an account. That means you can go back in, and then you can submit the other kinds of forms that you need to submit for your claim. The first question is whether you're eligible. Sheila just walked through the statutory and regulatory requirements for eligibility. There are a lot of things that we have to make sure are there before we can find somebody eligible. So we, and I'll try to zero in on the things that are most important as we go through this. So you fill out your eligibility form, and attached to the eligibility form are a series of exhibits and attestations. Now I want to mention those particularly because we need your signatures. We need the claimant's signatures on these forms in order to go ahead and process your claim. And one of the things we're seeing is that people are not filling those out, or they're not submitting them, or they're only filling out some of them. And that really holds up the process. We are trying to see if we can structure them a bit differently so that they will be easier to see the places where you need to sign or initial. But that's very important because without those forms, we cannot go to the third parties we need to go to get information, like NIOSH that Sheila mentioned. We can't go there without your signature. So until those forms are in, the claim isn't really going to start proceeding down the process. So that's very important. You'll see them at the end of the form, but again, it perhaps is one of the most important pieces. So once those documents are in, and once we have your form and we have these signed exhibits, then we go through what the NIOSH process. Our first step is to see whether you have a certified condition, a condition that's certified for treatment by the NIOSH program or under the NIOSH standards, and that whatever condition you have that's certified for treatment will be eligible under the Victims' Compensation Fund if it's a physical injury. A word about this. The terminology that NIOSH might use in their certification process and what you might hear from your doctor or other people you meet with when you get medical treatment might be different. We have noticed that sometimes the information we get from the NIOSH program uses a broader definition, sort of a term that encompasses a number of different conditions. And so you might look at an eligibility letter and see that what NIOSH has certified you for is different than what you think the condition is. And we are working with NIOSH to try to get them to get more specific. But let me just give you a couple of examples. Some of these, Sheila had put up the list of eligible conditions. Within each of those categories, there are a number of different conditions that could be eligible. So those titles are sort of general titles, and then there are conditions within those titles that are eligible. In addition, if you have an associated condition or a related condition, if you've been treated for something and that has caused another condition that you need further treatment for, those will be eligible for compensation as well. So there are a lot of conditions out there that are compensable under the program, and those 17 or so categories for the non-cancer conditions are sort of generic categories. So if you get a letter from us, we will list an eligibility letter. We will list the conditions that we have found eligible, and if it doesn't make sense or it looks different than what you understand the conditions to be, let us know. We will try to make sure that we reconcile that issue. But whatever it's called, you're still eligible for it. So if you're not being treated under the World Trade Center Health Program, then you probably have a private physician. And we have some forms and materials that we need the private physicians to complete in order to understand what you might be eligible for if you're not in the World Trade Center Health Program. As Sheila said, it's a second step. This takes a little bit more time, but it is essentially the same process. We gather the information from those physicians, and then we get it to NIOSH, and then they tell us what's a certified condition, and we will let you know what you're eligible for based on that. What we're hoping is that your doctors will be happy to fill out these forms when you come in to see them, and that we will be able to get through this process relatively quickly as well. It shouldn't be, if they've been treating you, they should know and have their own notes and materials that they can refer to in order to fill out the forms. So while we're going through this process of trying to determine what conditions you might have that are eligible, we then go through the other eligibility requirements. We look at your claim materials to see if you meet the other standards. Some of them are very straightforward and easy. Whether you've had a lawsuit, whether that lawsuit has been dismissed, that's very straightforward. The issue that I think is most difficult for most people is establishing presence at the site. It's not hard if you were fire department. It's not necessarily that hard if you were in the police department. But if you were a volunteer or maybe in some of the other kinds of a contractor that's doing cleanup work, it might be harder to get the information that is helpful to us. We are working with as many employers as we can. As we identify employers that have employees or former employees that are making claims, we get in contact with them. We ask them what kind of information they have. We ask them whether we can have a contact person so that we can cut through all the time and the red tape and get directly to the information we need. And then we will post on the website, as we learn from different employers, we will post on our site which employers are willing to just give us information so you don't have to go get it, which employers don't have any information, which means that you might have to present something different to establish presence at the site so that you have some guidance there. If you don't have some kind of record, like from an employer or something like that, then we ask for affidavits. These are sworn statements by somebody, two of them, that somebody who can confirm that they know that you were at the site. And if, for example, if you're at the site because you reside in the area, there may be people in your building, there may be neighbors. Those are the kinds of people who could provide you with those affidavits.